between these three, Bill Waitsman, Nick Dozier, and Meagan, all three of them have started their own companies. All of them have deep retail expertise, and all of them, you know, are really leaders in their field. And Bill's going to lead the fireside chat, so I'm going to jump off and turn it over. All yours now, Bill.
So I get the privilege of interviewing these two guys, two real leaders in this space. And Nick, I'm gonna start out with you. Most folks associate Nick with Atlas, and what was about 5 years ago that Atlas kicked off? Seven. Let's get that right. Until I've got my facts right.
He's good with numbers.
Yes, he is. So you kicked off Atlas 7 years ago. When you were launching Atlas, what was the real problem or challenge that you were looking to solve for the supplier community?
You know, Atlas started off with a, you have to excuse my voice, I'm getting over something, but Atlas started off with a pretty simple goal. There's a lot of manual labor going on in this town from analytics perspective. You know, everybody's logging to Retail Inc., downloading data, throwing it in Excel. Maybe they knew pivot tables, maybe they didn't. So Atlas's first goal was mainly just the mechanization of Retail Inc. and other big, you know, retailer portals. You know, since then and quickly after that, once we got that down, we focused on that, you know, some of the value add, bringing some advanced thoughts and best practices and putting it into the content and such inside the platform. But it started off pretty simple and has grown quite quickly.
Yeah, and kind of fast forward from the 7 years ago to just the past year or so, been faced with a whole new set of challenges as we look at the e-commerce space. And I know for most of us here, we've talked some about the idea of accessing e-com data within the Walmart platforms and other platforms. A whole new set of problems for us today. How are you guys thinking about that, and what has that kind of led to in terms of your vision?
Sure. So inside the Atlas banner, we have a new division called Canopy, which is basically some new tools and new thought processes that we're building around e-commerce best practices. And e-com data is so different than brick and mortar, just from the scale of it, the types of information, public facing versus kind of locked behind the retailer portal facing. There's digital, social, you know, and much more that goes into what tells a true e-commerce story. So right now we're in the midst of creating some new, again, best practices that are layered into software tools and other things that we can share publicly with a lot of folks around capturing that data, getting your hands around and understanding it. It's just a much broader scope that hopefully we can cover here in a little bit.
Yeah, great. Meagan, let's switch over to you for a second. Great presentation earlier. I don't know about you guys. Was there anyone here that felt like some of it was doing this, and you're just like, I'm following you to a place? Anyone here that felt that way at all? Anyone, please, just a couple. Would somebody raise their hand so I'm not like, I get this every day at work, thanks. Anyway, thanks for sharing. Meagan, when you look at this space, and we're going to talk a lot about data today and accessing data and so forth, but as you look at the e-commerce space and you're trying to measure success for the clients that you work with, how do you measure success with some of the data challenges and so forth? When you think about success, how do you measure it?
It's a good question. I'm sure a lot of you guys are dealing with similar things where, you know, in order to get resources, you have to prove numbers. You're dealing with numbers that don't anywhere near compare to what's happening in brick and mortar. P.S. Amazon is huge and unprofitable. So all of those things kind of put together a really grim story for how you move e-commerce forward within your organization, even if you do have great champions and that sort of thing. Winning for me, for our team, and Nick, I know you're more on the lag indicator, but I really like the lead indicator, lag indicator kind of model. There are a number of lead indicators that you can manage, execute against, and prove out that will inherently have lag consequences. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, it's not an excuse to get off the hook, right? Results matter. And of course, if your category is growing at 30% and you're growing at 15% and your company's cheering you on because you're in double-digit growth, but you know your category is growing at twice the amount, nobody feels good about that. And so what I like to do is get a gauge. And Nick, you're probably going to die. Use Nick's data, not mine. But I get a gauge and say, okay, directionally, because what I don't want to have happen is for us to just sit still. As I talked earlier, I mean, speed is everything. And it's better to make decisions and break things than it is to sit still and wait for the perfect KPI, right? So build your KPIs out, adjust them as you go, and make sure that you're doing the lead indicators that will, given what you know today, affect the lag indicators. It's always easier to measure the data on the back end than it is to project in the front end. And I say easier. Again, if you're within 5 or 10%, in my world, you're in good shape. I'm sure Nick is more accurate. But it's really important to set goals. I'm very quantitatively driven, but it's also very important to just make a move. Don't get paralyzed.
So when you meet with a company for the first time and you're doing some basic assessment of their business, how do you assess whether they're winning or losing? And you know, how do you share that with them? I'm sure there's a lot of folks here that are trying to tell their company, if they've been in the position for a long time, they're winning, and here's why. And if they just took over the position, they're losing, and here's why.
Right.
How do you figure that out?
That's a good question. First things first, we take a UPC, one UPC that's across the entire portfolio, and we actually track that everywhere that it is. We track it on eBay. We track it on Facebook Marketplace. We track it on Alibaba. I don't care where that freaking thing is, I'm going to track it. Because that's actually the brand piece that your consumer is actually relating to. And so while you may say, hey, I've made a strategic launch, and these are the channels in which I am selling this product, consumers and the internet, the algorithms that are driving search, are actually tracing probably 5 times what you're actually tracing. So the first thing I do is say, your universe is probably a lot bigger than you know it, especially when you add in third-party sellers, resellers, that sort of thing. But so first of all, it's get the universe right. It may not be your strategic catalog that you're ultimately trying to push to consumers, but it's how the computers are reading it. And that in and of itself, if you can just take share away from people who aren't you, that's your first step. And so if I can establish how much share is just sitting out there that other people are making off of your product, and I can get, 5-6% back, win. Then we look at where we're intentionally selling, and basically force rank against the competition using tools that Nick or whoever have. You can do a lot of scraping on the UI UX, and again get real good directional data, and understand kind of where you're sitting and how often your product moves around in the rank to buy box. But it's real important to, like I said, first get your universe right, make sure you know what's out there, and again, just search a UPC. You can inspect a page with a left click, and just search UPC. It's very simple. Get all of that data down, or all of those inputs down, and then start building your story from there.
Great. Nick, when we're trying to measure success in the e-commerce space, access to data is a challenge for everyone. Obviously, you've launched a whole new company in Canopy, specifically focused against this space. Talk to us about how you view the differences between pulling data on the e-commerce side versus pulling data on the brick and mortar side, how you guys look at that. It's obviously quite a bit different and creates a whole new challenge for the supplier community. Can you just share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So, on the brick and mortar side, we're all familiar with Retail Link and software platforms or manual, folks that get into Retail Link, and the whole world lives inside that one portal, that one bubble. Every item, every store, every day, everything you want to see is in that one space. Getting into Supplier Center and then Venture Central and all the other different platforms across multiple different retailers, a lot of that data exists. But from a public-facing perspective, there's so much more. There's and things are so much more fluid. They change every second. You know, Walmart and Amazon are constantly changing their ranks based on sales that happened 5 minutes before, digital traffic that drives more traffic into the thing and adjusts hit rates and all kinds of things. Data is constantly changing, so you got to keep a constant eye on it. And one of the challenges we have is keeping all that, basically watching every SKU every single second across any given category, and bringing all that data into one spot. And what's neat about, and the scale is different as well. You do have 5,000 stores in any given, Walmart pool. However, you can somewhat get to the same deal from like home store specific type traffic or home store specific type pricing across Walmart does it, Lowe's, Home Depot, Best Buy, those types of platforms. So the data is just as big, even though there's 5,000 stores on the brick and mortar side. It's infinitely bigger actually on the other side, because not only when you're dealing with Walmart. I think it's important right now, everybody says they go to the Walmart buyer and they just want to regurgitate Walmart information. And they say, they want to bring like Kroger or Target best practice to the table, but you're not really allowed to communicate with your counterparts on that side. And so you walk into buyer meetings with, just the sales and or category specific info you have. Whereas on the e-com side, the buyers and whoever may be saying, you know what, I really care about what's going on at Amazon. Give me a peripheral lens into what's going on at Amazon, even though you can't share the sales dollars. Where do the SKUs you're trying to sell me represent? Where are they at on Amazon or Target or Kroger or whatever it may be? And so it's fun trying to get your hands on all that data. Right now we're kind of in an interesting spot. We have more data than we know what to do with, and best practices are still being figured out amongst ourselves and our partner customers and things like that. It's a fun challenge.
Nick, that's not something that I hear often in the e-commerce space. We have more data than we know what to do with, but impressive. Meagan, as you think about what Nick's talking about in terms of having access to a lot of data in the e-com space, how do you compare what the data outputs that you have with Amazon versus Walmart versus Jet? Maybe start by just speaking to those two as you compare the Walmart platforms versus Amazon, and then within the Walmart platforms, are the differences there?
That's a tall one. Thanks, Bill.
I told you I was going to save a couple hard ones for you.
I would say, Nick mentioned it, it's all about indexing, right? And so Walmart data will come in through different kind of nodes, which makes it really complicated for just trying to put everything into a spreadsheet. It's not apples to apples. And so when you're making kind of multi-channel, or cross-channel strategic decisions, should I launch here? Should I launch there? Is it going to affect pricing? That sort of thing. You just get into kind of a spin in terms of the columns don't add up, right? Walmart sends it in one way, Amazon sends it in another, and then forget Amazon third party. Good Lord. I mean, that's over half the sales that happen on Amazon, and we don't have any data to that. And so I think a really important thing that we do on our team, first of all, we get people with a lot of data. And then we really stop and say, okay, what are the 4 key metrics? I mean, having a lot of data is awesome. You can store it and use it for predictive modeling down the road. But in terms of real-time decisions, 4, 5, 6 metrics, get focused on those 4 or 5 things and really drill down into them. Get those right. Show your lifts, build your lead indicators and execute them, and then reap the benefits of your lag indicators. And then kind of earn the right to get more data in. A lot of people on my team, and myself included, we get paralyzed. Tools like Canopy or Profitero or whatever, they're great because they actually help me understand what metrics I should care about. And one thing I will tell you is if anybody comes into your office and says, these are the 5 key metrics you need, I've seen it before, this is exactly how you need to do it, I would question them. Because every single category and the way your product is positioned, even within that category, Hormel versus ConAgra, they're in the same categories. I would pull their data completely different because of the way that their ERP systems work and their inventory levels and their ship times, where their dock locations are, those sorts of things. And so what you need to do is make sure that you're building metrics that are appropriate to your channel, your category, your level of competition, and then get a data guru to bring you the data. Have your data have your data delivered to you. Don't spend time. You got too many problems. Have your data delivered to you, make decisions off of it, and then track those decisions. The cool thing about data is it stores for a long time, and so you can take a pause and take a long weekend and look at all the wrong decisions you made. I promise they're there because you've been storing the data all along. But again, don't wait for it. Just move.
Nick, back to you for a second. One of the things I've heard you say before is, your quote is, you have to get content right in this town. Something that you kind of built your foundation of Atlas was just getting the content right, getting data right, and being very accurate with how you pull that together. As we think about as a supplier community here, we think about getting access to the data. Kind of what's next? What do you do? So I've got great data. Now what?
Sure. And I have said that about the content before, but at a certain point, it's not always just about the content. Right now this town is hot on getting content right. The SAM Summit, SAM's number one initiative right now, one of the number one initiatives of many is getting the content right, getting it built for business users, things like that. And on the Walmart side, there's a big push. I felt like about a year ago, it was get your SKUs online. I don't really care what it looks like, get it online. We helped a lot of suppliers do that, and it was just, title, brief description, it's up for sale. And then the next wave came of getting the content right, and there's lots of companies in this town that can help do that. Getting the right imagery, the right descriptions, getting it, does it match your brand message, whatever it may be. But after that, that wave will never come to an end. But once a SKU's online, at a certain point, it's going to stick there for a minute, and you make tweaks based on demand and different things. But after the content, it's about measurement. It's about finding the last 3-4% you can squeeze out of it, because over millions of dollars, 3-4% makes a big difference. It's finding or finding other ways to drive traffic to your pages, your product pages. It's working with some of the advertising agencies in town that will throw banner ads up on many different e-com properties, and then not necessarily taking their word for it on if they said they sent 1,000 pages to the product page. It's about getting a way to monitor the traffic against that product page, whether it's Walmart or Amazon or whoever it is. There's a million different ways to do that. It's not just about the content anymore, that content wave is it's starting to kind of crest, and it's getting paying attention to what people are saying about your stuff on social media. That has a big influence, as well as things like Google take a lot of that into effect. Walmart and Amazon may not be necessarily caring what people say about your stuff on Facebook, but the bigger search engine Google is. It can move your SKUs up and down. It's about the up and coming stuff of bringing up Google, right? They're turning into a retailer for the most part. They're working with some of the big names in town and trying to compete with Amazon and getting that digital shelf correct. It's about future state looking at for those of you that have access to category information or want to become category captains, it's looking at best practices and SKUs and assortment from a brick and mortar perspective versus an online perspective. There's a story that we've recently learned. The number one selling branded dog food online wasn't even carried in brick and mortar stores. And so there's lots of opportunity like that, and blending those in-store data sets with e-commerce data sets, and how do you tackle that? And here in Bentonville, if to have access category data, Walmart has to grant it to you. In the e-com space, nobody has to grant it to you. It's all public facing. You can get to it from your web browser.
Just find it. Yeah,
you can get to it. And so those of you that don't necessarily care about the big category, but look at where things are ranked and moving. It's after once the SKU's online, there's so much more that goes into influencing where it places, where it search ranks. There's a million things that go on to drive success. It's the Wild West right now, and everybody's still trying to figure out best practices, and it's more than just the content.
Nick, personal question for you. Are you enjoying the Wild West?
Oh yeah, it is a lot of fun. In the Atlas banner, it's the practices are established. The big blue chip companies come to us and say, this is how we want things done. We do have some value add best practices, and we can take that knowledge and share it with some of our other partners and customers. But in the e-com space, nobody knows. It's constantly fluid. Walmart and Amazon don't even have the end game yet, right? And so those that adapt, those that change, those that take chances, in my industry, us included, and then in the manufacturing industry, I think those are the ones going to win. Kind of go big or go home in some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Meagan, same question as you think about getting content right, getting the data story right, understanding the business. Kind of you've done full assessment. What's next?
Well, the good news is that loop doesn't end. And so, your obsession with making sure it's right and it stays right is kind of fun. So that's one thing. When you think you can move on, you can't, you shouldn't. You move it into a different phase of monetization, audit, reload, et cetera. And that's when you can start bringing in things like social listening, so, or AI kind of stuff. So if I use this example a lot, if fuchsia is now the biggest color on the planet and a Twitter hashtag, is calling out fuchsia, well, if I've got stuff with a bunch of pink stuff online, I'm automatically going to feed that through and upload it to fuchsia for a period of time, and then it'll go back to pink. But it's things like that, capturing, like Nick said, static content is static content. But if you can have some tie to what's actually happening in real time, which we encourage quite a bit, you can pull things in and help, like with what Nick said. The other thing is platform expansion. So you've got everything up. I'll tell you that 99% of our clients, we start with how you ship shit for Amazon. It's amazing how many people's Walmart business is just suffering because their Amazon team can't get the EDI feeds right. If Amazon operational metrics are down, it will impact your entire e-commerce portfolio. I don't care if you're in Bentonville, New York, or Singapore. You have to be able to ship stuff to Amazon when they ask for it and how they ask for it. If you get that wrong, everything else is going to crumble, which is really counterintuitive, because if I'm here in Bentonville and I'm managing my Bentonville SKUs and I'm on Walmart.com, my search is going to be impacted by what's happening on the other platforms around me. So the more you can diversify across Amazon, you got to get Amazon right for sure. But the more you can diversify, we're huge fans of Jet, we're huge fans of Box, we're fans of Holler, we're fans of anywhere you can get your items so that UPC can have legs beyond the Walmart ecosystem. And the Amazon ecosystem kind of balances out because those spiders are crawling, bots are crawling all throughout the internet. And the more touch points you have, the better when Amazon or Walmart comes and asks you for a 20% terms increase, you're not as vulnerable.
You mentioned something about, I didn't think about it till just now, the fuchsia thing, right?
You like fuchsia?
I don't even know what color that is.
It's pink.
It's not
You're
black,
not wearing
I'm pretty
any.
sure, I don't know. Anyways, so what's kind of neat, and I've had the opportunity to watch this with, again, the biggest companies to guys that have one SKU, is in brick and mortar land, as I call it, they if you have to react to something like the trend has changed from fuchsia to pink or whatever it is, you have to wait till do mod relays. You got to get the buyer to buy the stuff. You got to, maybe it's simple as changing packaging, but you got these massive things that go on. It takes forever to get it. And the buyers and the design teams and everything, you need to be thinking, a year in advance of what the cool new things are going to be, and maybe it's apparel or whatever it is, right? In e-com land, you still need to be thinking ahead, but you can change it now. From a content perspective, if you may not be able to re-dye the shirt tomorrow, but you can change the marketing message from an e-com perspective. You can change the way you advertise it. You can react, pretty much without anybody's permission. You don't need the retailer's permission to go change your product page in some cases.
When your brand manager calls, you can say, "Oops."
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I didn't know it changed.
So it's much more reactive. I mean, it's gonna be the small guys can be very disruptive to the industry titans. I have a friend who sells gun scopes online right now, and all he does is, he disrupts this massive gun scope industry. And all he did was source some products from China, screen print a logo on it, and he's printing cash now. and he's just a one guy in his garage that just disrupted an industry. He looked at the right search terms for the category, put his own money into it, and off he went. And he reacts very quickly. If I don't know much about gun scopes, but if one style changes or something, right, he goes and gets the next new one, the next new hot one, and goes. And I think what would be cool is to see the more smaller, nimble companies react very, very quickly to this change. Even if if you're on the stock exchange, you can still move very, very quickly in this e-com space. It becomes a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I would say, for those of you guys that are in big corporations, I was in probably one of the biggest, most slow-moving corporations on the planet, Hallmark, greeting cards. And I would say, as you guys are within, little guys always win, right? The kids in the garages and that sort of thing. But you guys can build teams within your organization. The space is so exciting. Find the young guys on your floor, bring them in, teach them a few things, and off you go. I really believe that if you're sitting here and you are a Hershey or a Clorox or whatever, and you feel a little bit stifled by your machine, there's always money in the banana stand. You can find a way.
Great, we've got a little bit of extra time. I want to open up the floor to questions. We can take a couple of questions for Nick and for Meagan. Let me take one of the microphones and I'll walk it out. So we've got an extra 10 minutes. Let's take a couple of questions from the audience here. Anybody?
It's actually kind of basic. It's just a terms definition. You mentioned lead indicators and lag indicators a couple times. Could you go into a little bit more detail on what those two are, what you're measuring, and where does that exist?
Sure, Nick's the lag guy. So lead indicators, I use this example a lot. We know, mathematically speaking, and due to physics, unless you have some wild health issue, that if you take in less calories, you burn more calories than you take in, you will lose weight, right? The lead indicator is I will take in less calories. The lag indicator is I've lost weight. Does that make sense? And so if I take these steps based on kind of a linear regression and understanding what these steps can actually mean, I can essentially get fairly close to predicting the future. Now, there's always variables, and the fun thing about running lead versus lag is your lead indicators always get better. Second round, third round, fourth round, because you get more data points out of the lag. But my point is set up, we know, guys, we know that if you maximize your character count by 198.2 on a title on Walmart.com, that you get 8 points in the search algorithm. Okay, well, that's better than 7 points. All right, so let's do that. That's a lead indicator. The lag is, you've hit the algorithm piece, but the algorithm may change, and so your lead indicators always, are adjusted based on the results you receive from the lag. Does that make sense? Okay, great question. Sorry. Do you guys do lead indicator stuff?
We do. We actually focus more on the lag, and then like I'll use your search rank one as an example, right? So we'll watch every SKU every day and look where search rankings are changing in any given category for our SKUs. When I say our customer SKUs, and then their competitive SKUs that they want to watch as well. Then we'll take that knowledge and try and figure out why that competitor, let's say, moved, right? A lot of times you can see it as a sponsored ad, as a paid ad, things like that, and so. That's a lag indicator that's why they moved, that they paid for that, and we can go back to our customer. They could create a lead, which would be, pay to play. Sales went up. We see maybe a slight spike in sales. In some cases, this can be on the brick and mortar side. But we're looking at it from an e-com lens. We'll look and say, what happened here? Was it a promotion in store, what it may be? No, this store just turned OGP. The people can pick it up now, and so we saw a slight bump. We're constantly looking. We do focus more on the lag to then create the lead, if that makes sense. The lead is a little bit more art than science to me. We focus more on the data and the science side, but it's very circular. One does affect the other constantly.
Got time for a couple more questions. but we may have more time. Yes, sir, Robert. Oh, be right over.
Quick question on OGP. Some of the practices that you guys have shared that you've probably centered on Walmart.com or Jet, do some of those apply to OGP, or since it's a different platform, does that change? I know they're both on Pangea now, but how does that affect what your strategy is?
I'll take it. Yeah, so OGP is a fun one. It's you know, it is a different site, right? Honestly, we're still trying to figure out ourselves a little bit with some of our partners. You know, one, it's not helping that Walmart's not releasing any of those numbers to anybody. They'll give you kind of hints, right? Like, you know, I'm going to mess up the numbers. Like, it's X% increase when a store goes to OGP. What I'm curious of, is that transferability to demand, or is that increased demand and transferability, or just increased demand, or sales, whatever it may be, right? You know, we're still trying to find that data, you know, or provide software tools to where our customers can get to that data and digest it. You know, so on the OGP side, then it's also still fun. You know, Amazon and Walmart treat that different. You know, Amazon's kind of doing OGP with Whole Foods. You know, Walmart has access to all the stores that they can do that with. You know, right? They have ship to store, ship from DC, a million different options. And, you know, I mean, our customers and us are literally, you know, buying 100 units of one thing to see where the number falls in the actual data. You know, we're trying to figure out, you know, where this information falls. You know, until Walmart releases it to the manufacturers, from an OGP side, you know, I don't know that anybody's going to be able to kind of guess to it, get to it. You know, I'm still curious. You know, if you think about it, my wife shops on grocery Walmart all the time. Like every other day, it's like, hey, I need to go pick up this stuff. And what I'm curious of, does her shopper pattern change just because her or I are pulling up to the outside of the store and we're popping the trunk? What am I buying different stuff? Am I buying more stuff? Am I, you know, buying more frequently versus if I had to walk in the store and walk up and ring it up myself, or have a cashier do it? I don't know. I have my opinions. Does it increase behavior? Does it change behavior? Does it transfer? Does it not? You know, it's still all over the place, and I think it'll also be different by category, by SKU, by category. I know she buys a heck of a lot more bottles of water whenever I'm picking it up than I do when it's like, hey, go pick up 2 of these at the store on your way home. So, you know, that could be a real-world example as I talk about it, right? Maybe that's one. Heavier SKUs may be better at pickup. I don't know. Until, you know, Walmart releases that data, it's something other than just, you know, by item by week. I don't think we're going to know. Or when I say we, I won't necessarily ever know. My customers will, you know, using the tools and the data. But I'd be curious to see what that looks like and see.
This may be a little hack, and, you know, Nick is definitely more of the science piece, and I'm a little more of the art piece. But, you know, another part of that Walmart.com/grocery, does anybody know how that started? Anybody know the folklore? It's the coolest story. Basically, they pulled together a group of, like, I don't know, ISP hackers and said, guys, create something. And literally, they built the code on a really shaky database and built it independent of the Walmart system. And that's why it's separate. So sometimes I try to, like, apply human characteristics to these computers so that I have a little more grace with them. You know, honestly, it's almost impossible for Walmart.com/grocery to talk to Walmart.com. It's easier for Walmart.com to talk to Jet.com than it is to talk to its own grocery site that happens to be 3 doors down here in Bentonville. That said, one of the things that Walmart.com/grocery doesn't have, nobody can place ads on it right now, right? So Walmart's the only one that can run ads. I guarantee you the second that ads are opened up, Walmart won't have to give us all the data. We can start tracing where people are clicking from, what's being served to them. We can pixelize it, that sort of thing. Again, not exact data and definitely not Walmart release data, but we can get a little bit closer.
Bob, I'm coming your way. You still have a question?
Picking up on your comment, Nick, about how the focus on content has kind of crested, I'm just wondering what the two of your opinions might be on what's next, and maybe more specifically, what I sense is that the category people are still very interested in improving the shopping experience for your portfolio of products. And we've had some success in engaging at that level. And so just wanted to know what your opinions were about that. And then if you agree that that's still a level of engagement, what are some of the topics or touch points that those people would be receptive to as you're looking to continue to gauge and improve your overall presence on Jet or Walmart.com?
Sure. So on the content side, it feels like the land grab of getting your SKUs online is the first thing that's kind of coming to an end. The content will constantly, I say that, let me kind of rephrase it. The content will constantly, need to be improved. Just having a title online, a description, was good enough a year ago just to satisfy a checkbox. Now it's improving, and there's, companies in this room, Billy and Rich Context, that can help with that stuff, right? They can put best practice around it to get best-in-class content out there. And I do think, if you put it online and you stop, you never improve it, you never change it, you never go from pink to fuchsia or whatever it is, it could cause a problem. But when you asked that question, when you said are you talking about like category customers, what they should do from a...
Just engagement, what would you all advise, or what do you think are some of the touch points where you can engage at the level of improving the shopping experience, right? So you want to get that, increase the conversion rate, make people now look, but click and buy, go to the cart, right?
Bob, I'll steal this from Fuchsia Man here. There's a difference between the pretty and the gritty when it comes to the user experience. The pretty is how engaged. I mean, when you look at Pinterest and Instagram and all these deeply engaged, there's so many great creative agencies out there that are able to kind of mesh that product page with what high-class advertising agencies are doing. I can tell you that from a gritty side, from the way that things are ranked from a search perspective, there's not a lot of math behind that. So you don't get a lot of credit for additional rich content, again, from a strictly math perspective. Now, one would argue that when it's more engaging, there's more click-throughs, which would drive, the math at that point. But in terms of like the raw algorithm, you get credit for doing your basics and doing your basics really well. So a lot of times when people come to us and say, hey, well, I've got this amazing advertising agency and they want to do this, this, and this, and I'm like, can you ship shit to Amazon? Because let's get that right, and then we'll start building it from there up. And so, is content continually engaging? Absolutely. But in terms of kind of like the pure math behind it, it's a tightrope. So don't overinvest, in my opinion, in really sexy, cool, brand-generated content. Do that for certain SKUs, but don't lose the obsession with getting your basics right. And that includes, multi-platform strategy. That includes, pricing adjustments and stock levels across multiple platforms, those sorts of things. Don't take your eye off that ball in order to chase beautiful content. The last thing I'll say kind of on that is, how many of you all know why the Amazon buy box is in the upper right-hand corner? Anybody know? It's because that's the only place Jeff Bezos could see it when he was programming, because of the way the light shone in on his window. And so what I'm saying about that is Amazon's a really crappy user experience. I mean, when you step back and you're like, who will shop there? I mean, it looks like a smorgasbord, right? And so kind of to your point, I think Walmart and Jet, especially, Boxed has done a great job, is really trying to kind of re-elevate that experience. And so, content in its current form is not as great. As Amazon continues to evolve and you see things like Amazon Fashion and a lot of their direct-to-consumer kind of brands, that they're private labels and things, those are becoming a lot more artsy. Well, you know why they're becoming a lot more artsy? Because they know that people are engaging that way. That said, it's a both and.
Good question. Guys, we're gonna move on, and we got to move on in the agenda just to stay on time, and I've got to do my job as moderator and actually come close to staying on schedule. Nick, Megan, thank you guys. Appreciate your sharing with us today.